welcome to today's Remote Wednesday session for A-Level English Literature. Today's lesson is focused on a bit of a recap on referencing. Yesterday in your lesson you will have got back your coursework draft and gone through some of the feedback with your teacher, and one of the things that you need to focus on when you're getting your final draft ready to submit is making sure that your coursework essay is fully and accurately referenced using the Harvard system of referencing. So today I'm going to recap how to use in-text citations, a reference list and a bibliography to make sure your essay is fully referenced. I'm also going to go through how to use a tool called Excite, which generates references for you using the correct Harvard form. And you're going to finish the session today by completing a quick quiz to check your understanding of Harvard referencing. So including references in your coursework essay might seem like quite a lot of extra work, but it is actually vitally important. You can't submit your final piece without it being referenced, so it's something that you have to do for this piece of coursework. First of all, referencing is vital to avoid plagiarism. Hopefully nobody would intentionally obviously plagiarise in their coursework essay by copying from another source without acknowledging that those words are not your own. But referencing is important to show that you are fully acknowledging the sources that you've used to help you in creating your work. So we have to do it to avoid plagiarism. It's also important because you're demonstrating to the exam board that you have good scholarship, a good approach to scholarship. You understand how to present and format a formal academic essay. So although you don't get, say, 5 extra marks in your coursework for referencing correctly, it's part in a way of your AO1, so the presentation of your work, structuring and presenting your work clearly and effectively. Lastly, sort of thinking about moving on from A-level, actually referencing fully your coursework essay is really important as preparation and practice for university, because if you're going on to a university level study, you will have to use a system of academic referencing for every essay you write at university. So actually learning those skills and that approach now is going to be really helpful for your future plans if you're going on to further study. The method of referencing that we ask you to use in your literature coursework essay is the Harvard method of referencing. There are other methods of academic referencing, but this is the one that we ask you to use for your coursework essay. The Harvard method uses 2 different types of references. It uses in-text citations. So this means references that you give in the main body of your essay, so in your paragraphs while you're writing. And then it also includes 2 things at the very end of your essay, a reference list and a bibliography. And I'll explain later on about the difference and what goes in those 2 documents. The Harvard method does not use footnotes, so we wouldn't be expecting to see any footnotes in your coursework essay, and it also doesn't include the need for any Latin words or terms that are difficult to use, so it's a fairly straightforward method of referencing. The first part of referencing your coursework essay is going through the main body of your essay and making sure that you have got in-text citations. An in-text citation is where in the main part of your coursework essay you have given a quote from a text or another source. You have to include an in-text citation to start to give some details about where that quote has come from. So the first type of in-text citation you're going to be using is one for a primary text. By a primary text, we mean one of the 2 novels that you're writing about. So every time you give a quote from one of your novels, immediately after the quote, you need to give the page number that that quote came from in brackets. So you've got an example on the slide. Bronte emphasises Cathy's sense of longing to escape to the wildness of the natural world when she declares, "I wish I were a girl again, half savage and hardy and free." So you can see that the page number appears in brackets immediately after the quote. Even if my sentence was going to continue on after this, I would still put the page number immediately after the quote. I wouldn't leave it till the end of the sentence. And in terms of how it's formatted, you can see I've used round brackets, not square ones, and I haven't written out the full word page. I've used a lowercase p, a dot, and then the page number. If I was using a slightly longer quote that had run over into the next page, then I would put p.126 a dash 127 and then close my brackets. You can also see this is the end of my sentence, and the final full stop then comes outside the brackets, not in the brackets. So that's how we put in an in-text citation for a quote from one of the novels. You can see that I don't need to give any other information other than the page number. I don't need to put Bronte's name in the brackets. I don't need to give the date or the title of the novel or anything like that. I literally just need to put the page number in. Obviously, in your coursework essay, you won't have just included quotes from your two chosen novels. You'll also have quoted from other sources, and we refer to these other sources as secondary texts. So this is anything you've quoted from directly in your essay that isn't your two chosen novels. So two of the main types of secondary texts that you're likely to have quoted from are books and journal articles in your coursework essay. And so I want to show you how to put in an in-text citation for these two types of texts. So again, remember that your in-text citation is going to come immediately after the quote. If we're quoting from a secondary text and it's a book or a journal article, we need to give a little bit more information in the in-text citation than we do for the novel. So as well as the page number of the book or journal article, we also need to give the year of publication. So we don't need to give the full date if it's from a journal article. We don't need to say the 6th of May, we just need to give the year. And we also need to make sure that we've included the author's last name. Now, there are two ways of doing this. You might have already used the author's last name in your sentence. So you can see in this example, I've actually started the sentence with the last name of the writer I'm quoting from. Cottrell suggests that learning is easier if it builds on earlier learning. If I've already included the author's last name in that sentence, I don't need to give it again in the brackets. I can just give the year of publication and the page number. And you can see how this is formatted. Again, it comes immediately after the quote. You give the year of publication first, followed by a bracket, and then P dot and the page number. And then if this is the end of your sentence, remember the full stop comes outside of the brackets. Alternatively, it might be that if you've included a quote from another book, so not one of your main novels, we're still talking about secondary texts, or from a journal article, that you haven't actually mentioned the author's last name in the sentence before quoting. If that is the case, if you haven't already mentioned the writer's last name within that sentence where the quote appears, then you need to include their last name in your brackets, your in-text citation. So here's another example. It has been suggested that learning is easier if it builds on earlier learning. So I haven't already mentioned the author's last name in this sentence, so that goes first in the brackets, and it's just their surname. We don't need any initials or their full name. So Cottrell, comma, then the year of publication, comma, and then the page number. And again, use that format on the slide, P.69 before you close the brackets. The type of source that you're most likely to have quoted directly from in your coursework essay is a website or online source. And again, if you are quoting directly from an online source in your essay, you need to give an in-text citation immediately after the quote that you give. Here, again, you only need to give the author's last name and the year of publication. So you don't need to give the full title of the web page or the URL, the web address in the main body of your essay. You just need to give the author's surname and year of publication. And you can see an example of how to format this on the slide. So it has been argued that Hardy presents Bathsheba's growth as an individual as a progression from vain self-contemplation to objective self-assessment. So the in-text citation comes immediately after the quote from my online source. In brackets, again, we start with the author's surname, so in this case, Bullen, then a comma, and then the year of publication. And you should be able to see the year of publication on the web page if it is a reputable online source. If you had already used the author's name in your sentence, so if you'd started your sentence by saying Bullen has argued that Hardy presents Bathsheba's grace, then you wouldn't need to give the author's last name again, you would just give the year of publication in your brackets. Because it is an online source, we obviously don't need to give a page number here for this type of in-text citation. It's worth me just reminding you and giving a little word of warning about the types of websites and online sources that you should not be quoting directly from in your coursework. And this isn't just me saying this and being snobby about things like Spark Notes or Wikipedia. This is feedback from the exam board. So when they are looking at your reference list and bibliography, so they're looking at the sources that you've quoted from in your essay, they want to see that you are using academic critical sources. So that does not include things like Wikipedia or online study sites, so things like LitChart, Schmoop, GradeSaver, Spark Notes. These sources are fine to use when you're kind of initially studying the text and you want to develop your understanding of the characters and the plots and the ideas. They can be really, really useful for your initial kind of understanding and ideas of the novels, but they are not academic critical sources. So you should not be quoting directly from these types of websites in your coursework. Remember the types of online sources you should be quoting from. So we want to have academic critical articles. So this might be things like online journals, like e-magazine, which the college subscribes to, or Massalit, which we also subscribe to, which gives you short lectures from university academics. It might be using JSTOR to access online academic journals, or it might be using websites that are linked to universities. So, for example, there's lots of kind of helpful critical articles out there on university website pages, and showing that it's an academic source is often shown through the end of the website address. So if the website address ends in .ac.uk, it shows you it is an academic institution or organisation. So this is going to be a sort of reputable academic source that you're using. That's step one of referencing, is to make sure you've got an in-text citation for every single quote that you have included in the main body of your essay. And the final thing to flag up about in-text citations is they do count towards your overall word count for your essay, which, remember, is between 2,500 to 3,000 words. So when you give a word count at the very end of your coursework essay, you do need to include your in-text citations in that word count. So part 2 of referencing your essay is then when you get to the very end of the piece, you need to include 2 things, a reference list and a bibliography. These should be placed on separate pages at the very end of your essay. So when you finish your conclusion, you should then start a new page, which you head reference list, and then after that start a new page again, which you head bibliography. Your reference list and bibliography are not included in your word count, so these are not part of your 2,500 to 3,000 words. The reference list and bibliography is where you give the full details of the sources that you've used in your essay. So the first thing that you need to complete is the reference list. This is where you give full details of all the sources you have quoted from directly in your essay. You start with your primary texts, which are your 2 novels, remember, and you list these first in alphabetical order by author's last name. You then list all your secondary texts, so everything else you've quoted from directly in your essay, books, websites, journal articles, and again you list those in alphabetical order by author's last name. On a separate page, once you've done your reference list and included everything you've directly quoted from, you then give a bibliography. Your bibliography is everything you've quoted from directly in your essay, plus anything else that you read while you were preparing your essay that you didn't end up directly quoting from. So you might have actually read a couple of critical articles or online articles when you were planning and writing your coursework essay, which you thought at the time, this might be helpful, but maybe in your final essay you didn't end up quoting from them. Well, you need to include them in your bibliography to show that you also completed some further wider reading as well as the sources that you quoted from directly. Your bibliography, you don't have to worry about separating into your 2 primary texts, your novels, and then your other sources. You just list all the texts in alphabetical order by author's last name. So that's step 1. So in terms of presenting your references in your reference list and bibliography, and in making sure you include all the information that's needed about the texts, it's important that you do use the Harvard system of referencing, and this needs to be used consistently throughout your reference list and bibliography. Now, there is quite a lot of rules that govern exactly how you format and present the information. So the easiest and quickest way to create your reference list and bibliography is to use a tool called Excite, which is a referencing generator that is created by the college and you can find on the LRC homepage. And what this does is it creates your references for you. It tells you what information you need to put in about each type of text that you've used in your coursework essay, and then it creates a Harvard reference for you that you can simply copy and paste into your reference list and bibliography. So I would absolutely encourage you to use Excite to create your reference list and bibliography. It saves huge amounts of time and it will make sure that all your references are formatted correctly and include all the information about the text that you need. Okay, so in order to access Excite, log on to your College Student Hub homepage. If you scroll down, you'll see among the icons here your LRCs. So if you click on that, it will take you straight to the LRCs page. And you'll see here we've got the Excite Referencing Creator. If you click, it will open the Referencing Creator for you in a new window. Now, the first thing to be aware of here when you're using the Referencing Creator is to make sure that you select the correct type of source at the top here. So we're going to start with a book because that's obviously the most common type of text that you will be referencing in your coursework. So if you click on book, it will then load the page and it will ask you to fill in the details for the text that you're using. So if we're going to create a reference for one of the novels that we're using in the coursework, let's use Wuthering Heights as an example. So we need to put in the author's surname and then just the initial here. So we can just put in E rather than Emily Bronte. Year of publication, we need to make sure that this is the year that the specific edition of the text that you were using was published. So although Wuthering Heights was originally printed in 1847, you need to look inside the front cover of your edition and check what year your specific edition was published. So here I'm going to put 2010. Then obviously we need to put in the title of the novel. There's no subtitle, that's the full title of the novel, so we can skip this box. And you don't need to worry for your two novels about putting in the edition number. We do though need to put in the place of publication, which again you can find on that inside front cover, and the publisher. So in this case it's Penguin. If you then scroll down, don't worry about putting in the quoted page numbers here. We've already done our in-text citations. We're just using Excite to create the reference that's going to go in our reference list and bibliography. So that's all I need to put in. Then if I click on Create Reference, over on the other side of my screen, you can see that it's created a beautifully formatted Harvard reference for me, ready to go into my reference list and bibliography. So do make sure on the right hand side of the screen that you are going down to the bottom here and looking at where it says reference list. This is what we want. And then you can simply copy and paste the text here, and that can go directly into your reference list and bibliography. And that is formatted correctly for you. You don't have to worry about, have I got the full stops and brackets and everything in the right place. So that's a reference for a book. Obviously, you might have used different types of sources in your coursework in addition to books. So, for instance, you might have used a journal article, for instance, something from e-magazine or perhaps something from JSTOR. So here, make sure that you have again selected the right type of source, that you have selected journal. Again, we need to put in the author's surname and author's initial. So I've put in the author's surname and initial. I have got the option, if the journal article is written by more than one author, to add another author. I could just click on here and add another name. Again, I need the year of publication and I need the title of the article first of all. So here I've used an article called Landscapes in Wuthering Heights. And the title of the journal, well, this was an article from e-magazine. Now here, you want to give as much information as you can about the particular edition of this journal. So if there is a volume number, add that in. If there's an issue number, add that in too. And here you also need to give the page numbers of the article, the whole article within the journal. So this particular article appeared on pages 5 to 8 of this particular journal. Again, if I just click on then Create Reference, over here on the right hand side of the screen under the heading Reference List, I've got my beautifully formatted Harvard reference to go in my reference list and bibliography, which again I can just copy and paste straight into my work. You might also have used websites as sources in your coursework, as we've mentioned already. So again, there is an option here in Excite to create a reference for a web resource. So again, make sure that you have selected the correct type of text from the top here, and then you can add in your details as before. So here, if I am referencing a web resource, the first thing to be aware of is I need to choose at the top whether there is a single author who's identified on the web page, or whether it's been published by an organisation. So for instance, if it's been published by the BBC. So make sure you have selected the correct option for your source. I'm going for one that's got a defined author on the page. Again, we add the author's surname, and then we want to just add the initials of this particular writer. So we also can add another author, again, if there is more than one identified as the author of this particular web resource. Year of publication. So if it is a sort of reputable, reliable online source, there should clearly be a date of publication on the web page. So here I've got 2015. If there is no date of publication there, then you can leave this blank, but obviously you do need to provide that information if it is visible on the web page. The title of the article that I'm creating, which has appeared online, is an article called The Magnanimity of Wuthering Heights. So I'm just going to pop that into the box there. And then you do need to copy and paste the full URL for your web page. So the idea is that somebody could follow this link and find that exact site again. Date access. So ideally here, when you were researching your coursework, you would have made a note of the date that you went onto this website. So this is something I looked at over the summer. So it's the 23rd of August 2020. If you didn't make a note, which often we don't when we are working on this kind of essay, you need to estimate a date. So roughly, when did you access this website? And then once again, we can click on Create Reference. And again, over here, we've got the full reference for this web page, which I can just copy and paste into my list. So if you've used Excite to create your reference list and bibliography, what you should end up with at the end of your coursework essay is first of all a reference list that looks a little bit like this. You can see, although this hasn't got 2 novels on it, it starts with the primary text. So I've got Wuthering Heights, my novel here. It's all formatted using Harvard form because I've just copied and pasted it directly from Excite. And then I have got all of my other texts that I've created from in my essay, my secondary texts, listed in alphabetical order by author's last name. And you can see I've got a book here, I've got a journal article here, and I've got a web page here. And so when I've used Excite, I've made sure that I've selected the correct type of text at the top before I've started putting in the details. And then I've just copied and pasted those references into my reference list here. And then my bibliography looks something like this. So remember, this needs to go on a separate page after your reference list. This should be everything I directly quoted from in my essay, plus anything else I read but didn't end up quoting from directly. Remember, I don't need to put my primary text, my novels first, so I just need to list all my texts in alphabetical order by author's last name. So you can see here I've actually got a sort of secondary text here, another book that I've used first, and then I've got one of my novels because I don't need to separate them into primary and secondary texts. And again, I have just copied and pasted all my references directly from Excite so that they are all formatted correctly using Harvard form.